Joe Rogan Podcast. Check it out.
The Joe Rogan Experience.
Train by day, Joe Rogan Podcast by night, all day.
All right, what's happening, baby? Good to see you.
Oh, likewise. It's been a long road for both of us.
It has been a long road, man.
Yes.
I think I first met you in 1997.
I don't know the dates, but I remember meeting you officially, or in my memory, in New Orleans or somewhere around there, when I was sitting like in an auditorium, and you came in and sat down next to me. And at that time, people used to bother me all the time. And so I was getting some fresh air and away from everyone. And you came up and sat down, and I was in my head. I was like, oh, no, I just want some peace. And you rolled up, and you were totally cool. And I was like, oh, that guy's cool. We had a good session rapping.
Yeah, I remember first meeting. You know, when you talk about like the early days of the UFC, like you are one of the real original legends of MMA. I mean, you were one of the very first guys, and you were one of the very first guys. First of all, you were one of the very first guys, if not the first, to wear gloves, which I always thought was very smart. I know Vitor, I think, was one of the first.
No.
Who was the very first? Was it you?
I don't know. The people out there in the internet world say this Melton Bowen guy. He was a striker, boxer kind of guy in the early UFCs. I did not get the idea from him at all. And who was the other guy with the one glove, boxing glove?
He just died recently. Damn it.
Yeah.
I forgot his name.
It was back in the days with the Fred
Art
Edish.
Jimerson.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Fred Edish. That's right.
With
Fred Edish.
And Harold Howard and all those guys
Yes.
kicking. And at the time, I had just gotten out of jail for beating up a cop's son, and he used his position to his dad make things go the way for the prosecution, even though he deserved to get beat up, and I obliged him. But I was going back and forth from a halfway house to work from the guy that got me into the show. And we stopped off at like a Dick's sporting goods store, big box sporting goods store like that. I don't think it was Dick's, but it was something like that. And they were bag gloves. And I put them on, and I go, these would be perfect, but they had a post in them, so you couldn't really wrestle with them. And I was like, I could take the post out. I ended up cutting it off, and it was just a clear plastic thick tube that you could hold on to. So I got rid of that, and I go, these are perfect. And I think they were Harbinger gloves. And I knew, because I'd been in hundreds of street fights, altercations. That's where I come from, although I've wrestled since I was 8 years old. But I used to beat people up on the street that
deserved it.
Yeah, absolutely. There's not one guy out there that didn't want to do the same thing to me. I was just better at it. So I knew my hands would get hurt. And I'm like, you can't fight 3 times in one night without your hands getting busted up. So I cut those out, and I go, these are perfect. I could wrestle in them. As I said, I'd wrestled my whole life, and they were perfect.
Did you have hand wraps on?
No hand wraps.
Just the gloves?
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you wrap your wrists or anything?
No.
Nothing? Mm-mm. And what was the law back then? What were the rules, rather? What were the rules for what you were allowed to wear wrestling shoes? You were allowed to hit the nuts back then. And your first fights, you were allowed to pull hair, hit the nuts.
You could do anything. There wasn't until I came along. And anyways, you just couldn't, I can't even tell you what you couldn't do, but that you couldn't bite and you couldn't eye gouge. Those were the only 2 rules.
I think fish hooking, right?
No, that was me.
Oh, really? You started?
I introduced them to fish hooking. And so at the fighters meeting, they have these meetings with all the fighters, and they all sit in there and I guess think they're badass, but I guess they are in their own world. But so they're all sitting around, and Big John McCartney was up there explaining the rules, and I think he is having trouble since there wasn't any. So at the end of that, I asked him, I said, I had the gloves with me, and I said, hey, can I wear these? And in his big, bellowing, goofy voice, he goes, oh, if you want to wear them, go ahead, thinking I was some kind of fool, when in fact I was thinking everybody else were fools. They've never really been in a fight and your hands get busted up. So
Yeah, I thought the first time I saw you wearing them, like, that guy's smart. That
Yeah.
and look, and when you knocked out, was it John Tua?
Matua, yeah.
John Matua. When you knocked him out, I was like, see, like this, you can still generate insane power, but you don't hurt your hands.
Absolutely. And I didn't hurt my hands, although at the end of that fight, I not that fight, but you fought 3 times in one night, and I think I busted up my hand. It didn't break it, but it busted up where I had to go to the hospital and get it x-rayed, and I got to go. I didn't want to go because I was a kid, and like no one sends me to the hospital, even myself, you know. My busted up hands, no, I'll be all right. But my father talked me into going, so I went there, and all of my opponents were all stretched out, and I'm saying, oh, well, how you doing? I'm just passing through. So they x-rayed it and said I was all right, and went back to the cocktail party and had some fun.
Did you have any, like, injuries during your career?
Oh, sure. I mean, when I needed knee surgery against Ferrozo, I couldn't run. I couldn't do anything. And I ended up taking the fight. I told him I didn't want to fight. And then back in those days, they had ways of stacking the cards against you. And so the owner of the show at that time says, hey, show up. You got you have a boxer your first fight, so that's not going to be a big deal. And he goes, then you got a little guy, like a 200-pound guy that was from Shamrock's camp. What is it, Bolander?
Jerry Bolander.
Yeah. And you can fight him, and he's nothing because he's like, 200 pounds. You throw him around like a rag doll. And I'm like, okay. It's talking me into it, realizing he's just trying to sell his show and get it over. And I'm like, yeah, well, I'm never one to say no to a fight. And so I said, okay, you talked me into it. I'll show up. But I couldn't run. I couldn't do anything. And like jog one time around the track of 400, I couldn't do it. So I go and take the boxer, make short work of him. And because boxing is good if you're going to box and stand up in a ring, but you're not going to go anywhere in a fight just with boxing as a skill. It might help you throw a punch and that kind of thing, but if your main plan of attack is boxing, you're going to get taken down, and you can't box from your back. So anyways, back to the show, I take short work of him. And I'm like, all right, so I got this little 90-pounder, 190-pounder, and make short work of him. And I think I was supposed to fight Mark Coleman at that time. And I was like, oh, well, we'll just see who's tougher, not get taken down, and we'll just throw punches. And he's not really, at that time, very skilled on his feet. So I had at least a fighter's chance at the whole deal. And so, you have these like dressing rooms that are screened off. And there's an opponent, or not an opponent, alternate, big guy, going crazy, making all this noise. He sounded like an elephant running around in a cage. I'm going, what the hell is that guy doing? I go, he's not even fighting. He's just an alternate. Well, it turns out it comes for us to go in with Bolander, and what happens? Oh, he pulls out. Why did he pull out? Oh, he couldn't make it. And I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And I just fell off the turnip truck. And next thing I know, I'm fighting this 300-pound plus guy who's all jacked up on God's knows what. And going, crazy.
Who was it?
Ferozzo.
Oh.
So I went out there, and this is at the advent of referees. And I don't care about winning or losing, never have. I'm always down for the fight and the battle of fighting. And getting bloody, sweaty, getting punched and punching people, man, that's what it's all about for me. And so I'm like, oh, well, I'll get in there. And we banged it out, and they had 3 refs, and they gave him the fight. I've had people say, if you really watch it, you won that fight. Don't care. They suckered me in with a little guy, and then they throw in a 350-pound dude. Ended up kind of ruining the show because Coleman didn't have anybody to fight, so he went out with Randleman and did like a wrestling exhibition. And it was like, why did you do that? You didn't have to pull Shamrock's guy out. It was behind the scenes kind of things that were all prevalent at that point in time.
Yeah, there was a lot of shenanigans in the early days.
Oh, yeah.
Well, it was so loosely constructed. You know, people have to realize, like, if you're looking at the UFC now, you're looking at, you know, WME-owned UFC, gigantic money, huge fucking special effects, screens. Everything looks amazing. The sound's amazing.
Professional wrestling.
Back then, I mean, UFC 12 was the first one that I did, which was Scott Ferozzo's debut. And we did it in Dothan, Alabama, and it was like a high school auditorium or something. It wasn't a very big place.
I remember the name Dothan.
Yeah.
Was that...
That was when...
they did an interview with me, and it was supposed to be at a different show somewhere, and they got canceled. So they put it up in Dothan.
It was supposed to be in Buffalo, but it got banned from New York.
Right.
So last minute we had to all fly to Alabama.
Right. So
yeah.
I was actually on the plane going to Dothan, or not Dothan, but to...
Buffalo.
Right. And they said, hey... there's been a change of plans. You got to go to Dothan. So I went to Dothan, and I was sitting in the 2-story hotel, not really a hotel, but one like a motel type thing. And I looked out across the parking lot, and there was a bar there. I said, yeah, what the hell? Why not? So I ended up walking across the street, and I was drinking at the bar with this crazy old country guy. Old school dude, he's like a peanut farmer or something like that. And we got blasted. And he goes, come on, I'll take you to the arena. And I'm like, okay. So we get in this old pickup truck, and he turns the key, and it sounds like a dragster. And I got Hillbilly Hayman or whatever driving this thing. And we drive to the arena, and I'm like, no, I'm supposed to do an interview. He ends up parking on the island, a grassy island. He drove up the curb. I stumbled in there, and David Isaacs is like, oh, my God, what's going to happen next? They got banned, and then I showed up out of my mind. And I think there might be a clip of me all drunk saying stuff. I don't know.
There's a bunch of those clips, I'm
yeah,
sure.
Oh, absolutely.
How old were you with your first UFC fight?
30 years old.
And did you have any competitive fights other than wrestling matches? Did you do any amateur fights or anything?
Well,
it kind of wasn't around back then, right?
No, there was no real fighting. You only did it in the street. And back in those days, I had wrestled, and then on my 19th birthday, I was hoping to go on. I had 1 year of wrestling in junior college, and a dumb drunk friend of mine drove into a light pole on my birthday. That's why my teeth got all knocked out. And it also put a gash right underneath my knee and mangled my knee on my left knee. And so my wrestling, I came back like halfway, maybe a third of the way into the season. And I just I didn't have enough time to get whatever. It's all written, meaning spiritually. And so I didn't perform the way I wanted to perform my sophomore year. I did not continue. No one was interested in me. So the whole time as a young man, I wanted to box. And my mother said, absolutely not. Not the CTE, and everybody boxes is stupid, and you're not going to do that. And I'm like, oh, man. So I didn't have anything to do. I was 18 years old, and I said, you know what? I'm going to box. And the same guy that, it was back when Mike Tyson was on fire, and he was the baddest man on the planet. And I was a young man. I go, not my planet. And so, he would obviously kill me in boxing, but there's not a boxing ring on every corner. And so I was all fired up with that. So same guy that I worked for at the clothing company, where the cut and sew type thing, it was for medical clothing. He lived up San Luis Obispo way, and he started boxing. And we were at a, just like what you would think, going into a boxing gym and learning how to box. And I go, man, I want to box. And he said, well, come on up, and then I'll introduce you to my trainer, and maybe, anyways, that got the ball started rolling, basically. So went up to San Luis Obispo, and there's a boxing gym just outside of there, Atascadero or something like that. And so I went to the gym, and it's like you see these reels where these guys you learn a skill like boxing, and then somebody that comes in that's a complete novice has no clue of what's going on, and they take advantage of these people. Oh, you think you're tough? You want to box? Well, if you don't know how to box. So that was the vibe when I went into the boxing gym. I go, hey, yeah, I want to box. Yeah, sure. I'll do this. And he goes, are you sure? I'm like, yeah. So they go, well, you want to spar? And they're all snickering. You want to spar? And I'm like, yeah, isn't that what we're in here for? Isn't that what you do? And they're like, oh, no, you have to learn. And I'm like, okay. So they go, like, all kind of like chuckling, going, oh, he wants to spar. And so they went and got a mouthpiece from a local, like, what do you call those stores? Sporting goods store. And it comes back, and they were trying to melt it in coffee and all that kind of stuff. And so this guy's got a name, a very big name from the 70s in boxing. And I don't need to talk about his family has a big name. And
Can't say his name?
I don't.
Okay.
There's no point in it.
Okay.
It could, but I was training with this guy and he did this guy. I have it on videotape and all that kind of stuff, so it's not like I'm making up stories. I'm the antithesis of trying to get myself over. I try to just go, no, So I get in there and I go, and they're all like, oh, this is going to be great. And this guy is a heavyweight and he had like 8 professional fights. And I believe they thought they were going to use his name and push him and get him some money somehow. And so I'm like, okay. And I go, I put boxing gloves on and hit the bag and played around and sparred with people. But I'm like, okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to do it.
Let's see.
Yeah, and I knocked the living snot out of him.
Really?
Yeah, I just said, fuck it. I don't know, can you cuss on this or whatever?
Yeah, you can cuss.
Yeah, but I said, okay, I wasn't sparring, like skillfully boxing. I was like, let's go. And we went.
And you had already had a bunch of street fights.
Yes.
And you knew how to hit things.
Yes.
And power is something you either have or you don't have. And you've always had crazy power. So if someone underestimates you and someone thinks, look at this guy, so they let their guard down, get a little relaxed, think they're just going to tee off on you.
No, he thought he was going to hand it to me.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, you'll see what's going to happen. And I said, this is going to be a street fight. And I knocked the living daylights. Like I said, I have it on videotape. And that guy was filming it, the guy from the clothing store. Anyways, factory. Yeah, but yeah. And so he's in the back going, oh my God. And I enlightened him that I didn't need to know the skill of boxing to take out somebody that had 8 professional fights in boxing. I pretty much handed it to him.
So what did you do? You didn't box with him. You just clinched, got close to him, and just started.
No, it was
haymakers?
on. I just started throwing, boom, 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 boom,
Really?
right down the middle. Let's go. And
so did you just always had skill with your hands? Like, I mean, that's pretty impressive for an eight fighting professional boxer.
I put my chin down, and I don't tell stories. Like I said, if you want to get a lie detector and a certified guy, I will take it.
Listen, you don't have to tell that to me. I know I've known you forever, so I'll just say it to anybody else. Tank says it as it is, always. You always have. Even when you lost, you were like, that guy fucked me up. That guy kicked my ass. You said you got molested by the lead singer from Queen.
Freddie Mercury.
My dad
He was slapping me.
My dad Safford beat you.
He was bitch slapping me.
You had the best attitude about both winning and losing. If you lost, you were very self-deprecating. You always had fun with things.
Yes. It's not the end of the world.
You were a great guy to be around, man, because it was a goddamn party.
Yes.
I mean, I don't know if you remember, but we got hammered a couple of times. There was a few different times at different hotels where you and I got drunk, and you with your whole crew, they were all a bunch of psychos. It was just like being around like a lot of pit bulls. Like jacked up pit bulls, like ready to go. But it was fun, man. You always brought a party. You were having a good fucking time. You were having a good fucking time fighting, and you were having and that's what made you a legend a lot, because you were everybody thought that the skilled martial artist was always going to beat the fighter, right? But you were a skilled martial artist, but you were kind of more of a fighter, just a dude who fucks people up. And for you to just be going out there and knocking people out, you became the biggest star of the UFC, even without winning it.
Right.
I mean, you beat a lot of good guys, but your power and your attitude, like when Matua went out and you did a little fucking dance, like everybody, because everybody thought martial arts was supposed to be Bao and, sensei and spirituality and meditating in the river, and you were out there getting wild.
Matua was metaphorically martial arts in my head. See, all these people run around, and martial arts is martial arts. Don't get me wrong. It works. It's a skill, but fighting is
chaos.
But I coined this phrase, I believe. Anyways, fighter's fortitude, and that is where it becomes fighting. It's not a skill that you learn and you become tough. Royce Gracie is not tough because he knows jiu-jitsu. He's a tough man. And all these guys that fight in the UFC are tough men, not because they know skill. like these people, oh, I see you getting an arm bar. Who cares? Anybody that sings skill is not a fighter. You're a pussy, frankly. I mean, you sit around and go, I can do this and I can do. That doesn't matter. It's how tough you are. Your fighter's fortitude. When someone's got a thumb in your eye socket or taking a big bite out of your back, and how you react and what you do from that, that's what fighter's fortitude is. Not like, oh, well, if he's got his thumb in my eye, maybe I could arm bar him or put him in a triangle. That doesn't save you. Fighting is emotional. It's not about skill. It's what is inside your head, the heart you have, and what you need to do to get things done to beat the opponent, hopefully, that's thinking the same thing you're thinking. And that is, I'm going to get to this point where I can kill this person or kill him. But basically, fighting is to a point where in the street anyways, and everybody that I beat up was trying to do the same thing to me in the street. They were trying to beat me up and get to the point where they could make the decision of killing me. And that's the whole point of a street fight. And it's not about, oh, I got better skill than you. That's the difference between a street fighter and somebody that goes to the gym and learns how to throw a correct punch or a submission hold that's going to save your ass. You can learn those things. You can't be tough by learning those things. You can become tougher by learning those things. And if you're a tough guy and you learn skills, that makes you tougher. Like Hoist Gracie, he's a tough man. But that guy's got skills up the yin-yang in jiu-jitsu. That makes him even tougher.
But he has the mental fortitude to keep it together in the chaos. Yeah,
fighter's fortitude.
And some people, even very skillful people, for some reason don't have that.
Yes.
There's moments we've all seen where you get this guy who's like, especially a lot of guys who are gym heroes. There's a bunch of guys that in the gym, they look sensational. They look like this guy's going to be a world champion. Keep an eye on him. You watch them sparring, you watch them hitting mitts, and you're like, this guy's insane.
Right.
And then they fall. They maybe reach like 30% of their potential when they fight. You could see the panic in them. And when things,
they don't have it in their head.
Yeah, they don't have something, the thing that some guys have, like a Max Holloway has, that he'll fight to the end. To the end.
Fighter's fortitude.
There's zero quit. The quit is not in there. You can go searching around for it forever. You're never going to find it. And then there's some guys, even though they're really talented, you can get to a point where they'll break and they'll just try to survive.
Yes.
And there's a difference. And it's the great ones, all like John Jones, like so many of these guys, like they find a way to win and they never give up. No matter how chaotic it gets, no matter how bad they're losing, they find a way.
100%.
Leon Edwards in the 5th round against Kamaru Usman. Perfect example. He's getting taken down and manhandled, and he finally lands a head kick in the 5th round.
There you go.
And he becomes a hero.
And it's all fighter's fortitude.
Yeah.
It's about being a tough guy.
Yeah, and you can see it in that fight. Have you seen that Usman-Leon Edwards fight?
I haven't seen it.
It's fucking amazing because his coach is sensational.
Mm-hmm.
And his coach is screaming, don't let him bully you, son. You know, they're from English. In England, and the Rocky music is playing. There's a clip of it online. You get goosebumps every time. Every time I see it. Every time I see it, I get goosebumps. It's like that thing that is the difference between a fighter and just someone who's skilled. That was something that you, I think, introduced more than anybody in the early days of the sport. This is it. You want to see this? Because this is so fucking good, man. Play this.
Listen, stop feeling sorry for your fucking self. But come on, man. What's wrong with you? You're too fucking damn. You gotta pull the shit out of fire. Come on, man. You got it, man. Come on. You got it.
What, the music? Yeah, but it's part of the fun thing.
Yeah.
That his fucking coach is sensational. Also, they're doing it this way to avoid copyright strikes from the UFC.
Sure.
They're just showing photographs of it. But it's the kind of person who never gives up, the kind of person who finds a way, really knows how to actually just, it's not just skill. There's another element, and that's what you're talking about.
If you put it to UFC 6, that was the awakening of the guillotine choke, because you had jiu-jitsu, and then wrestlers came along and started handing it to the submission jiu-jitsu guys. And then UFC 6 came along, and they came up with the guillotine. Now, Oleg got the guillotine on me twice, and I fought myself out of it. I've never timed it or whatever, but it was a while. I was losing consciousness. I was seeing black, but I pulled myself out. And in fact, you brought up the fish hooks. When I finally, the first time he got it, and I pulled my head out, and he was laying there, and I'm like, what are you going to do now? And then I reached down and fish hooked him and started banging his head on the floor.
When you look back at yourself then, does that even seem like you?
Yeah, why not?
I mean, it's just, I mean, of course it is you. But I mean, the young, hulking you smashing guys.
This was also just the one round, correct?
Yes.
Like a 17-minute round?
Yeah, there's no rounds.
Was it, did they have a time limit on any of the fights?
No, and I would have won that fight if Big John McCartney wouldn't have stuck his melon in between us and break us up. You know, that's how you were talking about how they fix the fights and everything. He broke this fight up. There were no rules, not supposed to do. Look, he's breaking us up. Why did he do that?
Why did they do that?
Yeah.
Were people booing?
Yeah, that was all John McCartney. Why did he break us up?
I don't know. Like, what were the rules back then?
There were no rules. All they had to do was give him a track starting gun, and he could stand there and go boom, and that's all he needed to do.
He just had to start the fight.
And
so this restart was just completely because of him?
Yes,
because of Big John McCarthy?
Yes, he's corrupt and he's a crook. His idea of what he thinks fighting is, and he's a full-on Oleg submission guy because he's all into technique. I don't know this. He's never said it to me. But he's all into skill and everything else. He has no respect for fighters' fortitude or anything like that.
You don't think he does?
No.
I think he does.
Well,
I mean, I think you have like a personal dispute with him, but I like Big John. And
you might like him, but he leveraged his made-up persona, Big John, to get me kicked out of the show. Him and his wife, they got me literally kicked out of the show.
You kicked out of the UFC?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
What year was this?
Very early.
Why would they want to get you kicked out of the UFC?
Because he does not like me. He's a cop, and he doesn't like the fact that I'm probably in his eyes a thug. But the point is, he has a bee in his mind. He's never liked me. He was a jiu-jitsu student before he started in the thing. They for the Gracies, they didn't have a ref. So Art Davey goes, hey, what about that big guy, Big John? And then Big John was a cop and everything. And he did background checks on me before I got into the UFC. Like, oh yeah, no, this guy he's got a record. I've been arraigned at least 7 times for beating people up. And shit was hitting the fan. It was getting bigger and more. You're gonna get in trouble pretty soon. Thank God I had a great attorney, and he was a guy that could point out the truth, and people would see that, and the DA would go, okay, community service. I'd go do that at the boxing gym. So anyway, so John checked into it and he goes, no, this guy really is a street fighting legend like Tank Murdoch. And obviously the guy's dad was a cop, and that underlying it doesn't matter. But he did not like the fact that I came along after the Gracies, because he was like a stooge for Gracie Jiu-jitsu and the whole 9 yards. And when I came along, I kind of said, no. Fighting is emotional. It's not a skill. It's not a skills match. It's what you have in your head. And he obviously doesn't have anything in his. But so at Puerto Rico, I used to go around to dojos and go in there after I'd cruise around drinking a 12-pack in my van. And we'd pull up to dojos and walk in there and go, does anybody want to fight? And nobody did. And so I lost my train of thought on that. But, this is it. Okay, so when I was working out with weights, and I wasn't a strong day for me. So you have to know when to say, no, I'm not lifting today. So I felt compunction and I needed to go do something. I said, let's go check this jiu-jitsu place out. They had flyers at the Westminster boxing gym where I was boxing after I left that Bakersfield thing. So we go in there, and all the other kung fu and Wing Chungs and all that stuff, no one ever wanted to fight me. And I go, let's go check out this jiu-jitsu thing, see if it's real or not. And this guy's supposed to be a world champion and all this. And since it's out there, I'll say who it was, but it was Alain Goes. And so he's supposed to be some world champion, this and that. And at this time, we're totally green, didn't have really respect for jiu-jitsu or anything like that. And I was with Paul Herrera and Eddie Reese, who are very accomplished wrestlers. And I go, let's go check it out. I'm not lifting. Let's go see if this stuff is for real. So we go into the jiu-jitsu thing, and it was a little bit of a drive. We get in there, and I say, hey, we want to roll around with you, see if we check this stuff out. And they're Portuguese. Oh, demonstration. And I'm like, oh, what the fuck is this? Anyways, so one of the guys goes in the back. I guess they put cameras up in these little mirrored boxes, the one-way mirror things. And so Eddie gets up there, and he's a little guy. And so it didn't take him very long to tap him out with like an arm thing. And then Paul, who's is a All-American from Nebraska wrestler, bigger guy, like 190-ish. He gets in there, and I'm like going, what the hell's going on? Because they're lasting, and he's on his back. And at that time, I was like, what are you on your back for? It's stupid,
Yeah.
You're totally ignorant of what was going on.
Yeah.
And I'm like, holy fuck. He ended up tapping him out. And I'm like going, wow, he made short work of Eddie, and he tapped out Paul. And I had respect for Paul for his wrestling abilities and where he'd gone and trained and wrestled for. And I was like, holy smokes. Well, I'm rather large and very powerful. And Alain Goes is not. And so I go, okay. And they were starting on their knees and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, whatever. So I get on him, and I had because the medical place, the cut and sew place, I had a scrub on. So I'm on top of him, and he grabs like a nurse's scrub because they don't rip or anything like that. And he does like an X on his thing, and he starts choking me. And I look at him, like, kind of roll my eyes, like, really? Like, I went like that, like, fists on both sides of his face, And he's like, oh, okay. And so we rolled around. And then he finally got to an arm lock. And like I said, I was doing curls with like 120-pound dumbbells and stuff like that. And so I picked him up. Basically, he was like a foot off of the mat, and I raised my right hand up and made a fist like, you want me to fall down on his eyes got huge as the moon. No. And I'm like, okay. So I let him down and let it go. And he was like I've had enough of this big guy here. And so we left, and whatever goes on in somebody's head, like, oh, who's that guy? Almost in a narcissistic way. Oh, I got him in an arm lock. I would have used him for it doesn't matter. Anyway,
Pile drive him in.
Yeah, there would have been a whole bunch of bad for him.
Getting slammed.
Yeah, so Puerto Rico, I don't know. Paul was fighting in that show. Well, it was David versus Goliath there.
Oh, that's right.
Uh-huh.
Did he fight Big Daddy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Big Daddy had a videotape of him, so he knew exactly what to do with that high crotch.
Mm.
That was all staged, not staged, but prepared. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so Alon Goes comes up afterwards. This is all the way full circle back to John. So Alon Goes comes up after Paul gets elbowed. Well, my Big John didn't stop it. Who knows? I know. But anyways, so he starts mouthing off. He must have had too much alcohol or something. And I'm like, who do you think you're talking to? And, like, really? You were going to go there? Okay. So he had like him and all his friends were behind him. So I popped him and was going after him. And me and Eddie were fighting the whole contingency of Brazilian fighters in the audience. And then we go to the back, and old school warrior, and like, no one sends you to the hospital. And I'm telling Paul, hey, fuck that. You're not going to the hospital. You don't do that. And he's like, huh? And there was a Dr. Istergo and John McCartney and his wife, Elaine, who is Karen. I think her name should be Karen. Is Elaine McCartney. Anyways, she comes running up and starts pointing her finger in my face and saying, get the hell out of here, I'll kill you. Just hyperbole in the moment, charged type thing. They try to make a huge move out of that, and then... Oh,
so that's how you get kicked out.
And then John's like telling Bob, I'm going to quit, and Elaine's going to quit, and if you don't kick him out, that's why I didn't go to the show. And mind you, I was the personality of that whole show at that time, and I think they went to Detroit or something like that after that words, and everybody's like, where's Tank at? There's the show. And Bob's like, we got to fix this. And so somehow a letter came up of apology to their leverage of they were going to quit. I'm like, who cares if they quit? He's just he's a referee. He pulls the trigger on a gun and then he affects fights by breaking people up and giving people chances and everything else. He's a corrupt person. And who cares? But I guess Bob was leaning into the fact like, oh, he's developed a personality for himself. So anyways, we're going to have this letter made, and we'll send it to the McCartneys, and then they can be soothed, and then I'll be allowed to come back. And that was all around the same time with the Ferozzo fight with my knee messed up. And Bob, being the slickster that he is.
But don't you think it's also just possible that Jerry Bolander got hurt? Because he fought too, right? He fought a fight first, right?
It's possible, but I'm a kind of a
Little
cynic.
conspiracy theorist?
Yeah, a cynic.
I see where you would feel that way. And I think in the early days, one of the things that Dana White does a really good job about is like he kind of he talks to everybody, have conversations with people, sit people down, talk to them, explain this is great, this is not so great, this is what we think we could do with you. Like, no, back then it was chaos.
Yes, absolutely.
It was chaos. And a referee today, they're allowed to stand people up.
Right.
But back then,
no.
that wasn't.
I understand completely what you're saying.
Yeah.
But back in those days, those guys set up a lot of stuff.
What'd they set up?
All right, it won't come to me right off, but I will tell you.
It does. Well, I don't want to put you on the spot.
No.
So you think that they had people that they wanted to win, so they made things work a particular way? Well,
like the Don Fry fight, him fighting is the people comment, it's not his friend. Who Mark Hall, that guy went out and did the job for Fry.
it looks like he did.
No, he did.
Yeah,
I mean,
it
come
looks
on.
like it when you watch the fight.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
And they fought before, too.
Yeah.
He just went out there and fell down. And then, regardless of how easy my fight before is, mentally it's a whole different ball of wax.
Yeah, it's a different ball of wax if one guy goes through a war and one guy goes through a real easy fight.
Yeah, emotionally, though.
Yeah.
In your head, like,
Sure.
you got to get all ramped up to go.
Yeah. Especially if you had a real close fight, your legs got beat up. There's a lot of things that can happen. One guy can knock a guy. The tournaments are so crazy because one guy, it's almost like it's better than not fighting because he lands one punch, knocks the guy out. Like, oh my God, I already won. I won a fight. I know I'm performing well. I didn't get hurt at all, and now I'm loose. My brain's loose. And then you could go through 3 rounds of hell with some fucking psychopath where you're barely surviving, both of you, and you get to the final round and you're like, or whatever it was back then, it was 1 round, but you get to the final end of it and you're like, oh Jesus, I got to do this one more time with a guy who's fresh.
Right.
Yeah. And if you can rig that, and if you want to, you can set a bracket up. I'm not accusing them of doing that,
well,
but you could do it.
Same thing with that Anthony Macias guy that fought Oleg before me. Oleg went out and choked out his first opponent with a guillotine choke real fast. And then he fought Anthony Macias that winks at him right before the fight.
They wink.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, like, hey.
Yeah,
Like,
hey.
that obvious?
Where do you want me to fall down? And I fought the 2 biggest guys ever fought in the UFC. Well, a 400-pound guy and a 6'5", whatever, 300 or 280, whatever size you want to make. Real fights, not some guy that's out there laying down, going, okay.
Well, the early days, it was so loose, and you never knew when it was going to go away because it was already getting suspended from cable. Cable kicked it off. You could only get it off DirecTV back then.
With John McCain?
Yeah, John McCain. And John McCain allegedly was doing something for Bud Light. So he was working with Bud Light, and Bud Light wanted boxing.
Right.
It's kind of, the whole world was conspiring to keep MMA from flourishing back then.
Absolutely.
I mean, it was a real big deal. They would disparage it. There's a funny video of Bob Arum talking about it. They're rolling around on the ground like homosexuals.
I saw that, yes. I was laughing about that, too.
It's amazing. It's amazing because he's such an old school guy.
Right.
For him saying that, it's very funny.
Immediately, I was like, "What's his angle? Why is he saying that?" And he's just
boxing.
trying to say, he's trying to say boxing.
He's just silly because boxing's awesome. I love boxing. Doesn't mean the UFC's not better.
Oh no, it's a skill.
Yeah. Yeah, boxing is an amazing skill. It's an amazing skill, and it's a huge part of MMA. I mean, if you can't throw a punch, you can't win. But it's a different thing. You guys are in. It's a game. It's a fighting game, whereas MMA is a fight. Well, boxing can be a fight too, but the rules are so specific. So limited.
when I went up and boxed the Atascadero thing, I came back here and went to Westminster Boxing Club, I believe it is. Anyways, I was fortunate I walked in and Tyrell Biggs was boxing, and his trainer, Matt Kierhard, I walked up and I was a white heavyweight, and back in those days, like, oh, and I'll train you. And I'm like, okay. He didn't have time for me. So I was like, okay, and I'm slowly learning boxing, and his underling was on charge of me. And I go, when we gonna fight? And he's like, no, you don't just fight. You got to learn how to box. I'm like, no, not me. I'm gonna fight. He goes, well, there's a show in 6 weeks in here. And I go, that's perfect. I'll do that then. You can't just do that. And I'm like, no, I can do that. And so this is also on video. I fought some guy that had been boxing for like 3 years, and I knocked the stuffing out of him. His mouthpiece went flying out of his mouth. And at that time, the guy that ran the gym was named Noe Cruz, and he was the trainer for Carlos Palomino. Old school Mexican, 6'2" guy, but knew his boxing skills like no tomorrow. And he went up to Mac and he said, hey, that guy's got something you can't train. He goes, you guys can be in here forever, but I want to train that guy. And Mac saw, I don't have time for him. I'm with Tyrell. He goes, we'll split him, whatever. So from that point on, after that first fight, I started rolling with Noe, not rolling, but boxing with him. And he's the one that got me sit down on my punches and all Mexican style, hard punches inside to the body, uppercuts, all that kind of stuff. Then he used to swing those big old leather bags. They're hanging from chains. It was like an old warehouse that had been there probably since the early 60s. He'd swing the bag and it'd come back, and I would just turn through, and the whole gym would shake, and his eyes would get all big and go, ah. Noe was a great guy.
Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you went and pursued just professional boxing?
Yes.
Because a big white heavyweight with knockout power like you, that could have been very marketable.
That was the whole idea, and they were all into that. And I remember, because I would show up to the boxing gym with black eyes and cuts on my face after every weekend, pretty much. And in fact, on my trilogy, Street Warrior, that's what they used to call me. Oh, the Street Warrior. And you go, oh, what do you do now? And I go, Noe, if only you don't understand. If they only had a fighting show with real fighting, not this boxing stuff. And he would just look at me and shake. He has a big smile and just shake his head like, you're crazy. And it happened. It was awesome.
How did you find out about it?
Well, I was driving. I used to work at a liquor store when I was going to college, and supplied my habit. But so I was looking through the Playboys, and I saw an advertisement for Ultimate Fighting. I don't know what. It was one with the tooth fell out.
That was the first one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I had, I was living with two other guys, pirated cable. He climbed up the telephone pole type thing. And so I invited my dad over, and I said, hey, man, you got to check this Ultimate Fighting. I don't know if it's real or not. I suspect it's not. I think it's probably just a offshoot of professional wrestling. He said, oh, okay, I'll come over. So he came over, and we're sitting there, drinking beers, watching the tube. And he came out with that grass skirt type thing, and I'm like, oh, see. And then I don't know who it was, a Gerard Perdot or whatever.
Yeah, Gerard Gordeau.
Yeah, and he kicked him in the face, and
Yeah.
his tooth went flying. I go, oh, yes, this is real.
It's real.
Yeah, I can't believe it, man. This is going to be so awesome.
So how did you contact them? Like, how do you wind up getting in?
Well, I was in jail for beating up this
Cop son.
right, and I got work release from that. From probation, I did like 3 weeks in jail in an honor farm, and then I went to like a probation apartment thing. Went to work and came back, and that's when my friend who worked for his dad at the medical clothing company goes, "Hey, you know that guy Chemo that works at the bar?" And I'm like, He goes, "You gotta know him. He wears like that jean thing," and I'm like, "Yeah." And he goes, "You know Joe-san?" I knew Joe-san from the boxing gym. He goes, "They fought in that show." And I'm like, "Well, yeah." I go, "Why is that guy fighting in that show?" Because he would always, I had quite the reputation back in those days. He would come find me in the line and go, "Mr. Abbott, sir, this way," and cut me in front of everybody and walk me in.
Is this Joe-san?
No, that was Chemo.
This is Chemo.
And I was, "Hey, thanks, Chemo." You know, and that's as much as I knew of him. Like when he was telling me, "You know that guy?" And I'm like, Anyway, so it was Chemo. And he goes, "This guy, Chemo, if that guy's in it, why can't you be in it?" And that's when I was saying, "Make it happen." And he started calling Art Davey on the phone. And Art's like, yeah. And then he goes, "No, you don't understand. This guy is the real deal from the streets, man. Everybody knows who he is." And he's like, yeah, we hear this story all the time. And he's all, not from this guy. And then it was back in the day when he had like a table like this with the phone and a speakerphone on it. And so he goes, "Tell that guy," because I was sitting in the back. He goes, "Tell him I got some guy that's like 6'8", 300 pounds that wants to fight him. And we'll see you next week at this time." It was raining. So we ended up going to Art Davies' office in Torrance, right around the corner, I heard, from the Gracie Academy, I guess they call it. And so it was raining, and I had it was back in the days when they had brown paper bags for grocery bags. So I put my high top basketball shoes in there and like stretchy clothes that you would wear. I had it all folded up, and I walked in, sitting here like we are now. He's talking, and he's like, "Okay." And this is before they came up with the Tank idea. And I said, "No, I'm a wrestler." And so he goes, "Okay, well, we'll be getting back to you." And he goes, "Oh, by the way, what's in that bag?" And I said, "Well, you said you had somebody that was like 6'8", 300 pounds that we wanted to fight." And he goes, "What?" I go, "Yeah, on the phone, you said that." And he goes, "You'd fight somebody?" And I goes, "Yeah, I don't go to jail." And he goes, "You're crazy. What? You're just crazy, man." And I'm like, "No, I'm down for fighting any time you want to do it." And he's like, he just shook his head, and we walked out. And like I said, did we go over the point of going where I got kicked out before even I got in?
No, we didn't talk about that.
Oh, so
they found out about your record before you got in? Is that what it was?
No.
No. You did something?
Yes.
Okay.
No, this is, I don't know. I've never talked about this publicly, I don't think. So this is why I told the Central Casting Mafia wannabe guy that they kicked me out. This is why they kicked me out. So they gave me a 1-sentence paper that says, "David Abbott's going to be in the next show," whatever. And I didn't realize that it had to be 6 because the Gracie's owned, according to my calculations the first 5 shows before Bob took over
Bob Meyerowitz.
for 6. And so lost my train of thought for a second. It'll come back. So he gave me a piece of paper, and it says, you're going to be in the show, not 5, but 6. And I'm like, oh, man. And, you're a young man, and your patience is like, I can't wait that long. I need like tomorrow,
Right.
And I was like, whatever. So I go, okay, just work with it. Well, you can train. And so a wrestler that was, wrestling, everybody knows the world and college wrestling. And this guy worked for a volleyball company, clothing company called Club Sportswear. And they used to sponsor volleyball players. And so Eddie knew him. I think they used to live together. Somebody lived with him that knew him. And he called up and said, hey, Dave's going to be in that UFC show. And so he goes, okay. And he goes, well, you guys want to sponsor him? And I don't know anything about anything sponsor, whatever. And he goes, let me ask my boss. And he goes, yeah, sure. This was new. He goes, yeah, we'll give him some clothes to wear and all that kind of stuff. And he goes, well, he wanted an airline ticket to go back and watch the show. I think it was UFC 5 in Charlotte. And so he sends me a ticket, and I'm like, wow, this is, I'm a kid. In my head, I was a kid, but not chronologically. I was a forever college student. And so I'm flying there, and I'm like, oh, man, this is so cool, these people to do this for me. And they gave me, like, bags full of clothes. I was like, wow, even socks and everything like that. It was, like, crazy. That's where I was in that time of life. And so we get there, and I had a big club bag, and they go, yeah, just try to get on TV, man, just so we can see our stuff. Well, I get to Charlotte, and I walk in, and it was like the lobby of a hotel. It was like a 2-story hotel, but it was a nicer, like a suites kind of hotel. It wasn't dumpy. And everybody in the lobby had their desk out, and at that time, it was martial arts. And it was Kung Fu Frank over there, and whomever. Jiu-jitsu Jeff over there, and I'm just like, and they're walking around like they're Steven Seagal with their chip on their shoulder and their chest out, and thinking, I'm like, what the heck is this, man? Are you kidding me? It looked like a swap meet for martial art wannabes. I don't know. And all these people are walking around like going, this is before UFC even, people knew. And they're like, wow. And I can remember some guys. I was just like, are you kidding me? This is like insane. These people are like just playing the role. And so I just walked on by, and I was like, wow, I got a room. And I went to the room, and I'm like, wow, like my first time really being somewhere by myself. And I'm fine with being by myself, but I'm like, what the hell am I going to do? So there was a UFC office in the hotel. So that's my first run-in with Karen McCartney. And I walked in there, and she's like, here are you, what do you want? And I'm like, wow. And I was like, hi, whatever. And Dave, the guy that set it up from the clothing company or the medical company, said, oh, you're going to be all set. You're going to have backstage passes. And I go, good, because I want to know what I want to do, and the lay of the land, So she's like, oh, yeah, whatever. And I'm like, okay, whatever. Maybe she's having a bad day or something. And so I go, what do I do? So I walked down to the lobby and I said, hey, man, is there a bar around here? And he goes, oh, yeah, right across the street over there, just down in there in the highway there. And I go, perfect. So I walk over there and everybody's partying. I sit at the bar and everybody's like, oh, what are you here for? Like, oh, you know, that UFC thing they're having at the Coliseum or something like that. Oh, yeah, that fighting thing. Are you a fighter? And I'm like going, I'm not technically really a fighter. I go, well, I'm not fighting in this show, but I got a piece of paper saying, you know, a contract saying that I'm going to be in the next one. So I can, you know, you partied with me. I like to have a good time. So it doesn't take long before the whole bar's rocking and rolling around me, and we're having fun. Everybody's like, woohoo, man, Tank. And I'm like going, ooh, cringing, you know, like, Tank. And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, oh, yeah, woohoo. And so we partied it up, had a good time. And so end up going back with these guys to, there's like a suites hotel. So there was like a room, like a living room, and then you had your bedroom type thing. And we're partying it up, and it doesn't take long before security comes and knocks on the door and says, hey, people are complaining about you guys. And God, I'm probably swinging off the couch doing all sorts of crazy stuff. And I'm like, okay. Well, it turns out Meyerowitz is right across the hallway, and I think he called. So that wasn't a good thing. And I'm like, okay, well, keep it down. I don't even know who Bob was. Art Davey was the guy. That's what he was purporting himself as. So I'm like, oh, whatever. And so toned it down. So go back the next day, and it all starts up all over again. And I'm like, yeah, let's go. And they're going, hell yeah, we're going to the fight. And I go, yeah, let's go. So we end up, I got these backstage passes and stuff, so I don't know if I can sit with you guys. So they got tickets, and they were in this little cubicle block of seats just up on the first rail. And they're sitting there, and I go, okay. And I go, hey, there's that Art guy. I go, hey, Art. And he's running around like he's Don King in a tuxedo. And I'm like, hey, Art, hey, you got my passes and stuff like that. And he's looking at me, he's giving me like the cold shoulder, like not even knowing. He sees me, but like, oh shit, I don't want to talk to that guy. And I'm like, oh, why is he being evasive? And finally, I called him over, and I started putting two and two together. Like you said, I'm kind of cynical, conspiracy theorist. He would walk around the hotel like he was King Kong, like I'm the man type thing. And right when I went in to get tickets, and Elaine and them are all in there, he's giving these two young girls these laminates and gave me the quick eye, like, what the hell is he looking at? Like, oh, you know, sketchy look. And when I got to the show, they just gave me paper tickets, and those two girls were running around with the laminates in the office. So I went two and two together. He gave them my laminates trying to get over with the girls, and just gave me some tickets. All right, so now just add a little alcohol, a little conspiracy thoughts going on in my head, and I'm going, that little worm. And I go, oh, I know what's going on. And so I go.
So you were supposed to get laminates.
Right, but those girls got the laminates when I went in to get the
And those
ticket.
girls that he had just met?
Yes, they were just groupie
Okay.
ring rats kind of thing. Anyways, so I'm like, hey, Art. He finally walked over. I go, what the fuck, dude? I go, you give me these paper tickets. I go, I can't see anything. I just want to walk around. And in the back of my mind, I wanted to get their clothes on camera. I was going to do like a cameo walk by,
Yeah.
I was a kid. Anyways, or young, or ignorant, or whatever, unwise. And so I'm walking, and he's like, oh, I don't tell you. You give me the shrug, and he walks off in his little tuxedo, and I'm steaming. And so that goes down, and the first fights go down, and one of the girls, there's like a group of maybe 10 people. She goes, hey, Tank, in the southern thing. She goes, I don't know. I was expecting something else. This is kind of boring, to be honest with you. And I'm like I was part of the show, And I'm like going, yeah, I understand. I think Gracie or Oleg or somebody fought and they were doing submission and it was boring. And so I go, let me tell you something. I promise you, it's not going to be anything like this. It's not going to be laying on the ground, rolling around when I fight. I promise you that. You have to believe me. And she goes, well, I hope so, because this, I can't get into my accent.
Right.
But she goes, I hope so, because this is boring. And I'm like, no, it's not going to be anything like that when I get in there. Trust me. And so that was the tone that was set. And more beers. I was drinking beer at that time. Maybe I was drinking some vodka then. But so we get back after the show at the bar, and I remembered everybody's like sitting around talking about it, and like, man, And I went, hey, you know what? I forgot. There's a cocktail party going on. And I go, what? I go, yeah, there's a cocktail party going on. My guy told me about it. Like I had back passes and the whole 9 yards. I go, but there's a cocktail party with everybody there. Anyways, so I go, let's go. And they're going, well, we're not. How are we going to get in? I go, you're fucking with me, man. We can get in. Don't worry. So I went over there. I had an entourage by that time. Believe it or not, I didn't even fight. And we walked in, and, they had typical banquet type stuff with the silverware and the rolled roast beef and rolls and cocktails. And so I was drinking, and didn't take long before I started telling them that they were a bunch of pussies and that they didn't know how to fight. They don't even know what the hell's going on. Wait till I get in there. And Jim Brown, the football player, was an announcer then. And I think he came up in a fatherly way, like, hey, calm down. Tell me what to calm down. I'll tell you what to calm down. I didn't have any respect at that time. And so things went on like that. And ended up taking Jim Brown's, what do you call those things? Like a derby.
His hat off?
Yeah, but what are they called?
I don't know.
It's like a hat.
I know what it is. Yeah.
Yeah, the word escapes me right now. His beret. He had a beret that he used to wear all the time. And
you took it off his head?
I took it off his head and started walking off. And I got about 5 yards away. And he's all, hey, young man. And I turned around and I threw it at him. I flung it like a Frisbee and it hit him in his chest. And he caught it. And he looked at me angrily. And I was joking around, having fun, that's all. And that might just be the cherry on top, but the whole behavior was that the whole night. And we left because it was closing down, and I had my fill of food, and we went back to my room and restarted the party up again. And then I left and came back, and they never called us back or anything. And I was like going, hey, man, what the hell's going on? And he's all, what did you do there? And I'm like, it's just being me. And I go, oh, no. And he was shaking his head. And then that's when Art called him and said, hey, that guy is a maniac. He's not only allowed to fight in the show, he's not allowed to be at the show. No effing way. That guy, he's crazy. And I remember my friend hanging the phone up and looking at me and slowly just shaking his head like, you blew it, dude.
So how'd you get back in?
I told you from the guy from the bar.
Okay, so they discounted all the things that happened in the past.
That guy made a phone call.
Well, it's the smart thing to do. I mean, regardless if someone's a maniac, it's a maniac sport. You just gotta have better security.
Okay, the lead up into meeting that guy that got me in, the professional wrestling guy.
Yeah.
Okay, so I get this phone call, you're out, boom.
Right.
And we go to this bar. And it's not it's a bar that normal people don't go to. And so, and we're in there, and I told Paul and Eddie that I didn't want to go there. I just go, I don't want to, it's trouble. And I was a well-oiled and primed machine for beating ass. And I'm like, and I had anger issues from being kicked out of my dream. And so they talked me into it. And I go, okay, listen, if anybody bothers me, you guys have to take care of business. And no problem. And we were supposed to be in a wrestling room training and fighting, but the wind got knocked out of our sails, my sail, but they were in there for me. And so we're in there, and it's a seedy place, and seedy things happen. This girl starts in with Paul. Paul disables her, and she falls on the ground.
Disables her?
Well, he foot swept her because she was clawing him. It's a dirty, it's a bad place. Anyways, so that Paul didn't beat up her boyfriend, I came up behind him and got double underhooks underneath him from behind and was pulling him back. And all of a sudden I hear this loud crack and a light flash across my eyes. I'm like, what the fuck happened? It was like, sounded like the jukebox machine got broke, the glass on it. What the hell happened, man? And I let go of Paul from pulling him back, and I turn around, and there's a guy with a broken pool cue standing there. And obviously I put two and two together. And his eyes were like, oh, that didn't go the way I planned because he's still standing here. And I don't know because I was knocked silly, but I heard that he got hurt really bad. And that's why the bartender or bar owner wanted to extort money from me from having a tape of me beating up those guys.
Oh.
He's like, yeah, that guy came into my bar and almost killed somebody, and I have it on videotape.
I see.
And that's a long roundabout back to the story.
Got it. Yeah. So it was a whole lot of fights and a whole lot of chaos. When you were competing, were you like, what kind of training were you doing if you were drinking that much?
Oh man, see, I really like to address this, and everybody
Please.
thinks people don't think that I train. I ran a marathon. You think that you just get up someday and go, I'm gonna go run a marathon?
Well, there's no way you didn't train.
Right,
At all. You look at you. You were very strong. You were obviously, even though you were a big guy, your cardio wasn't that bad. You were definitely doing something.
You try.
Yeah.
Try fighting 3 times on that day, the first UFC 6. I believe I could beat any man on earth that day. I was in my prime that day. The only reason why I lost is because of Big John McCartney and his breaking up the fights. He should have never broke that fight up.
Did they break? So there was no rule at all about standing people up.
No, none.
I personally believe, and I've broken this down too many times to repeat it, but I'm gonna anyway. I don't think they should ever stand people up. I think if a person could take you down, and keep you down. Tough shit. Even if it's boring. Like, the whole idea is, what's real?
Take it away from me about McCartney affecting fights. The first fight they had, don't quote me on this because I'm not a historian, but I believe it was Boss Rutan and Kevin Randleman. That was the first fight they had with judges. John McCartney got in there and broke that fight up twice so Boss could get back up and come back and fight him.
Were there rules back then about stand-ups?
I don't know. I don't think so.
That was an interesting fight.
I think
that was the first fight anybody ever won off their back, really.
Yeah, but no, he shouldn't have won. If you watch that fight, and I just watched it recently, Kevin Randleman kicked his ass, beat his ass severely, and John broke it up twice just so he could to give Boss an advantage,
A chance to get back up to his feet.
Yeah, and Boss is nothing more than a charismatic pancrase. Pancrase is fake. Listen to Ken Shamrock. He said it's fake. Well, at worst.
There were some real fights.
At best, it was predetermined, as Ken said.
I think there were some real fights, and I think this is true in all of Japan.
Okay.
There's some real fights, and there's some fixed fights.
But,
like when Boss fought Funaki, watch that fight. He beat the fuck out of Funaki. That was a real fight.
Yeah, I haven't.
I don't know if you've seen that one, but that is not fake. He beats the fuck out of Funaki. I mean, it's one of the worst beatings anybody's ever taken in Pancrase. Because Boss had figured out, instead of slapping, to throw palms like punches.
Well, I'm not going to get into
I know you discredit a lot of people because that's
I'm not
you.
just. Yeah,
but Boss Rutan was a bad man.
I think.
When Boss Rutan beat Tioki Koshaka, did you ever see that fight?
I don't. It's a skills fight, and what have you. I did see the
Tioshi Kosaka was a very good fighter, and that was not. I mean, it was a skillful fight, but it was a brutal fight.
But was that Pancrase?
No, that was UFC.
UFC.
That was his first fight in the UFC.
I haven't seen it. He's had 2 fights in the UFC.
I think he had 2 fights in the UFC.
And in my opinion, I just watched it. He lost to Randleman, so he's 1-1.
Maybe he had more. Did he have more than 2 fights in the UFC? I can't think of a third.
I think he might have fought the Indian guy.
Yes, but that was Ruben Villarreal, right?
Yeah,
but that wasn't in the UFC. That was in another organization. That was like a later fight.
Right. No, I fought that Ruben whatever guy. That was my last fight. I came off of my hotel bed and walked into the octagon.
Didn't you have a fight with Scott Ferozzo in a backyard?
Yes.
That fight's fucking great. We played that fight once on the podcast. We're like, this is so crazy. These guys are so wild. They're just fighting on the lawn.
Yeah, no, they called me up and said, I go, yeah, I'd love to fight that guy again. and I flew out there and they wanted to do it in an empty strip club.
How is this organized? Like, how does that take place?
Some guy named Brian Grooms
just came up with some money.
Yeah.
And said, hey, I'll pay you guys to fight on the lawn. Well,
he wanted to do it in an abandoned strip club. And I told him, I go, dude, he's like, I'm having trouble. I go, I'm not going to get arrested.
Yeah.
I go, I value my freedom. And he's like, yeah. And I go, I'll fight him anywhere. He goes, will you do it in my backyard? I go, hell yeah, I'll do it in my backyard. And so we went there, and I don't know what version you saw. He put some edited version out of it, but he ended up going to the hospital again. I sent him to the hospital the first time, and he went again the second time because of his big mouth.
Well, you were punching him on the top, and he was like cheering, like he was having a good time. It was kind of a crazy fight to watch.
Yeah, I don't know if he was cheering.
It was something like he was saying, "Woo!" Like this is great.
Yeah, he's trying to act.
Yeah, like he's enjoying it.
Yeah,
Enjoying getting beat up.
right.
Yeah.
Only if a girl's doing it to me.
How many fights do you think you had total in all of MMA and in street fights in your life? If you had a guess.
I have guessed. You know what? That's like asking Wilt Chamberlain about how many one-night stands he's had. You know.
Did he say 10,000?
Yeah, so like, you know, not 10,000. I kind of dabbled around before I got bored and thinking like, wow, you know, the last couple of years, at least 2 times a week, at least. And then, you know,
That's
so
100 a year.
that's what I'm saying. And that, I used to,
2 times a week. 2 times a week is so. If you looked at a chart of the average person, how many street fights they get in, the 2 times a week, that is the smallest percentage of the population that's alive.
yeah, well,
Yeah.
I was into it.
What did you enjoy so much about it? Because
Well-
here's the thing: you're not a dumb guy. You're like when someone can get to a conversation with you and you want to really start talking about things. You're a very bright guy.
Yes.
But you liked it.
Oh, yeah, I
It
loved
was
it.
like your favorite thing.
Well, you know, I broke it down and recently, not really recently, but after my surgery and all these kind of things, you sit around and talk to yourself all day. I come to realize, you know, there's a cliche, I'm the bully's bully, that kind of thing. I used to set up textbook narcissists that come in and display their narcissism around people. Like, you ever meet somebody that you're like, oh no, those two can't be around each other? Mm-hmm. Well, I was the kind of guy, and I'm more of an empath than people know, but my ears would perk up and my eyes would open up when I saw a narcissist that would try to belittle, put people down.
Okay.
And I would kind of like be, you know, and my brother's 5 years older than me, and I kind of maybe, you know, he's very athletic. I come from like a football, dad's a football coach, that kind of thing. And so maybe deep-rooted, I was resentful of him being older and able to push me around or what have you. Mm-hmm. And so when I see these narcissists, and I be like, why would that guy be doing that for what? Like, what are you, getting yourself over? And so I would put myself in their vicinity, and sooner or later, and if you look at me, like even today, when I walk down the street, people give me the eye like, yeah, you want some? And I just...
Do they really?
Oh, hell yeah.
How are you looking at them?
Well, you don't want to know.
Like, hey, do you want some?
Yeah, exactly.
So looking at you back.
Yeah, and I just smile, and it's like, it's like, are you kidding me? And I feel like Billy Jack, you know?
Right.
Like, you don't know what you're going to get into. Same back in the day. And I would go, no. You know, I wrestled 190 pounds. I wasn't like I was when I was fighting. Once I knew I was fighting, I just ate everything and just got as strong, as big as I possibly could. So sooner or later, and I go, no. You're going to slow down there. And sooner, are you talking to me? One of those kind of back and forth. And like I say, fighting to me is like walking the dogs. I don't, okay, we can go there if you want to. And like I said, I've been in a lot of fights. And talk about fighters' fortitude, you know, someone's biting my back or sticking their thumb in my eye socket. It's like, all right, just enjoy your time right now because you're going to pay the price. And the more you beat people up in the street and in life, the more jaded and you get used to it. Like, you know, I can remember like maybe in high school or something, man, in early high school, you punch somebody and you give them a black eye. It's like, holy man, wow. That, like, you want me to put my hands on you, you're going to pay the price. If I have to, especially nowadays, with my health being so fragile, there's a different kind of beating people. You know, when I was a youngster, I used to go to all open wrestling rooms all the time, and I remember this old warrior coach. He said, you know, son, human body can take a lot of pain, a lot of beatings. And I still remember to this day, and I'm 59 now, and it just kind of resonated and ringing in my ears. Like, when you think you don't think you can hit them again, and the more they are a smart ass, and the more they beg for a beating, I give them what they deserve.
Did you always feel that like you had like an ethic for like when you would get in fights or when you weren't?
Absolutely. You know what?
Like you'd only get in fights with douchebags.
Well, yeah, but they act like, oh, nothing makes me more upset. And it doesn't happen so much now I'm older now, but like, well, you're going to tell me what to do or talk down to me. That I used to go, oh, really? Are we going there? Well,
there's a lot of people out there, and
everybody thinks they're tough.
There's a lot of people out there that are just bluffing, and they talk crazy because they think that people are going to get scared. And
yeah,
you see it all the time online. You can watch 100 videos of them doing it to the wrong person. It happens all the time. You do it to the wrong person, and the guy. Like, do you ever see the Joe Schilling one?
No.
Is one of the greatest of all time. Joe Schilling, who's the man. He's a world champion kickboxer, fucking great guy. Joe Schilling's a nice guy. He doesn't start shit with anybody.
Right.
He's walking through a bar, and there's this really aggressive guy who's drunk, and he's talking a lot of shit. And Joe is walking by him. The guy moves, and he puts his hands on his shoulders, and he passes by. And the guy talks shit to him as he passes by. And Joe turns around and looks at him, and apparently the guy had been obnoxious all night, and Joe had been seeing him being obnoxious all night. And Joe looks at him and says, what the fuck did you say? And the guy flinches at him. And Joe just, boom, just 2 shots, and one as he's on the way down, and he's out cold. Watch this video, because it's a classic. Look at this guy. This guy actually wound up suing him and losing. Yeah. The guy sued him and lost. So watch, Joe passes him, and then the guy says something. He turns around, like he flinches at him.
Yeah.
Wrong guy.
Well,
those videos, people love those videos.
That's the hundreds of
Wrong
people.
Guy. Yeah.
That's the hundreds of people that I've come across.
Karma. You're like Karma's warrior.
Yes. Well,
going out to the bar,
yes,
knock down douchebags.
But back in the day before I became Tank, oh my God.
Yeah.
All the time. Like, who? Whoa. I've never acted that way. I have. Only because I would see them acting that way. I would go and overdo what they were doing.
Just to goad them on.
Yes.
Do you ever wonder what it would be like if you were born in a different timeline and you lived in today's UFC? Do you ever think about it? Like when you see how big it is now, and you see like the different rules. You
know, these kids and whatever. Yeah, I guess they're kids.
The kids to us.
Yeah, exactly. They think they put a new spin on the wheel. The wheel's been around for a long time, and you don't understand that you just because you learned a leg lock doesn't make you tough. And there's some old bruisers out there that'll take it to you.
Yeah, there certainly are. But it's a different thing now. It's a different thing with the 5 rounds with the world championship fight.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's a different thing.
It's like more of a skill.
I think it would be the problem is people wouldn't enjoy the entertainment value as much because people would get tired. You can't really fight for 15 minutes straight. You're going to get exhausted. But you can fight for 15 minutes if you take a break every 5 minutes.
Oh, there's not a problem, I don't think, with rounds. But when somebody like, say, McCartney gets to pick and choose when to break up the fight.
Yeah, I don't like that. I don't like that at all.
It opens the door for corruption.
I'm even though I'm a hypocrite, so I will say, like, when I'm doing commentary, they should probably break this up because I'm getting bored.
Mm-hmm.
But I really do believe that. I mean, I think if the thing is they're allowed to break them up now, it's part of the rule set, inactivity. But I don't think that should even be in the rules. I also have another controversial opinion. I think if you take a guy down and you're on top of him at the end of the first round and you're ground and pounding, I think the second round starts in that exact same position. They have cameras. It's super easy to duplicate.
They've done that in Japan.
They should do it. They should do that here. Why should you be allowed to start standing up, which is a hugely advantageous position for a striker?
Right.
Hugely, and you didn't earn it. You did not earn the stand-up. Like, if you got taken down and you got controlled, you never escaped that. And you might not ever escape it if it wasn't for you being stood up and you starting for the next round. Like, who knows? So not only do you get to get up, but you get a whole minute to recover, and then you're started in an advantageous position for yourself. That's not – it's like it's imbalanced. It's imbalanced. If a guy is grappling is a huge part of fighting. And if you're not a good wrestler and you're not a good grappler and some guy can take you down and hold you down for the whole fight – that's the fight. That's how it should be played out. That's reality. The reality is you never earned a stand-up. If you can't figure out a way to sweep that guy, if you can't figure out a way to get an underhook and get back up to your feet, then you stay down. And that should be what fighting is, even if it's boring, because at least this way it's realistic.
Yeah, absolutely. And like Mark Coleman, ground and pound.
I also think that if you're not touching the cage, as long as you're not touching the cage, knees to head to a ground opponent. I don't think you should be allowed to turtle. I don't think you should be allowed to just turtle and a guy sprawled on you and he's got a hold of your, like, a head and arm and he's on top. Why wouldn't he knee you in the head? Of course he would knee you in the head. That's a very effective technique that would end fights. That should be legal. As long as you're not touching the cage where you're not stuck somewhere, where you can move. You got to fucking move. You can't stay there. You can't allow that guy to hold you in that position. If he does, it's just as legitimate as getting the tie clinch and landing it standing up. It's the same thing.
Stalling.
Yeah, well, you can't be in that. You're not safe there. Also, touching the ground and avoiding knees to the face. Bullshit. You can't do that. Like, they should be able to knee you in the face. Like, you should not touch the ground because if you touch the ground, your face is wide open. You should be like this. Or you should figure out a way to get out of there or he's going to win. Or he got the best position. There's too many rules that make it less about a fight and more about, like, winning with the rule set. Like, the touching the ground thing is so crazy that guys have a guy clinched up against the cage, and if the guy touches the ground, you can't knee him in the face.
Right.
That's bananas. It's literally bananas. The guy standing up chooses to touch the ground so that he doesn't get kneed in the face.
Right.
That's a crazy playing the game part of the rules that doesn't lend itself to realistic fighting. That's not fighting. That's not like an accurate assessment of what would happen in a real fight. If you leave, like, some of the most effective things, other than, of course, eye gouges and nut shots and shit, but if you leave that stuff out, then you're leaving out, like, really effective techniques that would definitely work and probably would end a fight, especially knees to the head to a grounded opponent.
Right.
At 12-6 elbows? What? How the fuck is that still in there? I think they're taking that out now, right? Isn't that out now? They were just informing me they're either close to taking that out now, or you know where that came from? They were worried that people break bricks and ice on ESPN,
okay.
So they banned the 12-6 elbow. It's still, all these years later, 2024, it's still banned. It's
Right.
fucking crazy. They vote to remove. Nice. Okay. So this is in January. So is it into effect already? Is that it?
This might mean this New Jersey. I don't know if it's like countrywide, worldwide.
If it's ABC, I think it is. I think it is because Hunter Campbell is the one who told me about it. It was either him or Craig Borsari. But do you know the guys who run the UFC now? You ever go?
I haven't been. I've been on a medical hiatus for
Tell me
for
about
a long
this
time.
because
6
you
years.
they told you were going to drink yourself to death, and they were right.
I did that. Yeah.
You came close.
No, I
you
did
came
it.
close, and you came back.
Yes.
What happened?
Well, you saw what I used to do. I just kept on doing it.
I mean, what happened physically to you? Like, what
Oh,
surgery did you have
I
done?
got a liver transplant and a kidney transplant.
Holy shit.
Yeah, and I died 5 times on the table.
Holy shit. Did they do both at the same time?
No. They did the kidney or the liver first and wanted to make sure that it took hold. And then months later, they did the kidney.
How old were you when this was going on?
6 years ago.
Okay.
But I had, 53.
Yeah.
I had 5 strokes too. So sometimes I struggle. It's hard. I was for a long time, really, really slow. Like
After the strokes?
Yeah, it was all on the table. And so, yeah, it was a rough.
So do you have to take medication to make sure that your body doesn't reject the organs?
Yes.
And does that fuck with your immune system?
Well, it is about the immune system.
But I mean, does it fuck with you? Like, do you get colds? I always wondered.
No, but you know what happened is like I almost died from that too. I was 2 days away, according to the doctor. I got a roundworm infection.
Ooh.
That was, they think, hanging around for a long time. And once I got on anti-rejection medicine, it didn't have any
Resistance.
right. So it started flourishing, and they didn't know what was going on. And I was like, "No, you don't understand. I'm dying, and not literally, but from pain." And they're like going, "We don't know what's wrong with you." Anyways, I couldn't take it anymore, so I ended up doing 30 more days. And this is after a while of being home. And I was actually going to the gym, crawling around on the wrestling mat, and doing that kind of stuff. Turns out the doctor that saved me, Dr. Toto, he saved me twice, 2 different surgery type things. But he did a biopsy of my bowels and stuff and found that I had roundworm. And he's like, you know where you got this from? And I'm like, I have some guesses. And so.
Where do you get roundworm?
Well, I don't know. I went to Costa Rica a few times, but I don't know.
Is it like a tropical worm?
Yeah. Roundworm is like a intestinal thing.
Okay, so it's probably from something you ate somewhere.
Right.
Right. And so now it's just overrunning your body.
Yeah, slowly. And I was in the hospital after I did like 4 months the first time. The second time I went to the emergency room, I couldn't take it anymore twice. And I was there for 30 days on morphine. And it was very painful. That's where I developed a chant of pain is temporary, pain is temporary. And oh my God, for a month, they finally cut me open and did my bowels and found that I had roundworm. And 2 days of medicine and I was better.
Wow.
Yeah. I imagine people dying from that must not be very nice.
Yeah, I talked to this dude once who told me that like 90% of people that live in tropical climates, 90% have some sort of parasite in their body.
Well, it's possible. And
Want to hear a nutty one?
this is what I was going to say. It's
What
going
are you
to be
gonna
nutty. Okay, because I didn't say it. So when we went to Japan for the first time, I was there with a Brazilian fighter, and he was eating a lot of food. And Isaacs, Bob, all of them are like, going, Jesus Christ, you see how much food that guy eats? But I'm like, who? Oh, I go, I'll ask the guy and give it a rat's ass. What is he going to do? And so I said, hey, why are you eating so much? And he said, oh. I go, what, are you on the gas? What's going on? And he's like, oh. And I'm like, yeah, on the gas, huh? And he's like, no, it's the worm. And I'm like, what the hell is he talking about? Some type of Portuguese thing. And he was in front of everybody. And when I was in the hospital, David Isaacs came and saw me quite a bit. And he's like, don't you remember that time? He was saying, why are you eating so much? The worm. He goes, it's a roundworm. And I'm like, wow, I never thought of that could be possible. We were always eating dinners with all the Japanese people and everything. And I'm like,
you could definitely get worms from food. You know, and if you get tapeworms or roundworms, like that's a motherfucker.
Yeah, almost killed me. The infectious disease doctor came in with his badge and everything. He goes, yeah, you're down to like a couple days left.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Especially with the medication you were on, right?
Yes.
So the worms are flourishing. So you get rid of that, and they give you medication, and now now you have to get a kidney transplant after the liver transplant.
Piece of cake, though.
That was easy?
Yeah, it was really easy.
So the liver one was the bad one.
Yeah, I did over 120 days in ICU.
Whoa.
Yeah.
What is that like?
Hell. But, I was laying there, and my wife told me, obviously, that they were saying, it's time for you to start thinking about taking them off, unplugging me. It's getting to that time. And she said, it was like the surgical ICU floor, like they could do surgery right there in your room that you're in. And at Cedars-Sinai, Beverly Hills, yay. Anyways, she's like, the doctor, Dr. Toto, he came to her and said, hey, it's time for you to really start thinking about, does he want to live like this? I guess she told me I was just laying there with a tracheotomy with my eyes open and nothing moving. And she was there. Anyway, so David Isaacs came there. And they're going, yeah. He goes, I'm going away for the weekend. I'll be back Monday. And so they were talking about it, holding my hands. And David Isaacs said, have you ever seen Awakening? I haven't seen it. He goes, it was like Awakening. He goes, you had our hands. And he goes, you just, like your eyes came open and you started shaking your hands up and down. And so they didn't unplug me, and I'm still here.
Wow, was that close? And you died 5 times.
Yeah.
Do you have any weird memories of that?
When you have cirrhosis, went to the doctor's hospital and made it out by my house. and got a specialty doctor, digestive, whatever, GI doctor. So he put me in touch with Cedars-Sinai. You got to have a sponsor, someone to sponsor you to be allowed into the organ system there, transplants. And so I went there, and it was like a, meetings and association type, we're going to take you on. And then they say, okay, we'll see you in 2 weeks. You cannot drink anymore. Do not drink. You can't do it. Not even a little bit, nothing. You're done. And not a problem. And so I'm like, after a year, I'm like, going, man, what the hell is going on? I mean, they just go there and they take your blood and go, okay, see you later. Well, till the last time I went there, and you go in these little rooms and you get these like bed type chairs, almost look like dentist chairs, and I'm sitting there, and they walk out and they take your blood, and then she walks in, the nurses and the doctor assistants, and all of a sudden they get this panicked look on their face. And mind you, I've been doing this for like a year and a half, and I've met with the doctors, and the doctor said to me, he goes, I'll do surgery on you, but not until you lose weight. He gave me like 50 pounds to lose. I lost like 75, so they knew I was serious and about the whole 9 yards. And so there was like I'm sitting there in the chair, kind of like I am right now. And usually it's kind of like, hey, how you doing? And, what's going on?
Right. But they were much more serious.
Very serious. And I'm like, looking at my wife like, hey, what's going on here? And, she basically died with me during this whole time. And I'm like, what's going on? This something's not right. And she's like, I go out there and see what's going on. And she comes back and goes, oh, we're not going home. I'm like, what are you talking about? She goes, your kidneys aren't working. And I'm like, oh, okay. And anyways, so I'm like looking at her like, what the fuck? What's going on? And it was like the most alone I've ever felt in my life, except for her. And the doctor and everybody are not making eye contact with me, not doing anything. And a gurney comes in, and they throw me on a gurney, and I'm like, hey, what's going on? And they're like, they don't hear you, they don't see you. You just become like a log, you know what I mean? You're sensory void. You're non-existent. And I remember being pushed out of the transplant centers across the street by the hallway underneath tunnel type thing. I remember laying there, and the fluorescent lights above me looked like freeway lane lines. And I just remember laying there just going, oh, man, this is the real deal. You're dying. But consciously, it was like I died. It was like no one talked to me. No one heard me. No one saw me except for my wife bouncing back and forth trying to, hey, what's this? You'll be all right, you'll be all right. And I'm like just being pushed down this hallway to the hospital. And I remember getting pushed into this room with all these machines. It looks like the movies. And I'm like, wow. And I remember just laying on the bed there and just going, oh. And then my wife's like, like comforting me. And I'm like, wow. And to me, that's when I died. And then I woke up with Isaacs and my wife there. But I guess I was in that room for 6 days on the machines, and they were waiting for a transplant to come in. And one came in and told my wife we got one. And she's like, oh, thank God, and we're going to do surgery. Well, it turned out somebody else was waiting for one also, and they were a better match. And my wife said, they're a better match. She's an angel. She said, let them have it. So the doctor came back in, she said, like 6 hours later. And he said, all right, we're going to go to surgery. And she's all, I think you're messed up, even though you shouldn't be. But I think you messed up because we gave that other liver to somebody else.
Kidney, right?
No, liver.
Okay.
The kidney is later. My kidneys stopped working.
Okay.
So they put me on dialysis, I guess, and waited for 6 days. And so she's all, no, they gave that liver to the other person that was the better fit. And he's all, this never happens, but we got another one. He goes, never happened ever. And so they did me. And I was in a catatonic state for weeks and weeks and weeks. And then they were talking about unplugging me, the dialysis machines and all that kind of stuff. And he goes, I'm going to go away for the weekend. This is obviously conveyed to me from my wife. And take the weekend to think about what you want to do, because, this could be the best he gets right here. And she said the whole floor knew that was talk happened. And she said everybody that she would walk down the floor with, their mood changed. She said it was total darkness. It was like she'd walk down the hall and everybody would usually, hi, Sally, hey, how you doing?
Right.
And she said they were just like, oh, poor girl.
Right.
And then Isaacs came in, and she said they were both holding my hands. And I woke up. And
how's this experience changed your perspective about just life, knowing that it almost went away?
Yeah. No, I'm a totally different person, completely.
That's what you were telling me when I first saw you today.
Yeah. No, I'm not. I used to be like I hate to say it, narcissistic. Like, I'm going to conquer the world, and no, you can't mess with me. And now, it doesn't matter. I didn't care. Oh, you have that? Good for you. I'm glad for you. I don't know. Sometimes, maybe before all of this, I'd be like, oh, man, how that guy do that? Oh, man, I got to do that. I'm better than that. I can do that. Now it's like, good for you, man. Go out and mow down
Isn't
whatever.
that a way better way to interface with life?
Absolutely.
I wish more people could learn that lesson.
It took the hard way for me, but it's
so unfortunate
true.
that so many people go around angry at other people's lives.
Yeah,
and thinking that they deserve what that other person has. It's such a waste of time.
100%.
It's so bad for you, too. You're carrying around just a bunch of extra bullshit for no reason, and you're doing it to yourself.
Yes. And, I with Dana, I was in a dark place. And just there's some medical things about that when you get ammonia in your blood, and it makes you crazy. Like, they had like a warning thing around my room, like, watch out for this guy. Like, I guess I kicked a physical therapist in the chest and all this stuff, and I was ripping my cords out of me. But it's called encephalopathy.
Mm-hmm.
And I would just like, to my poor wife, to people that I've known for years, I was just talking crazy nonsense, like almost like Alzheimer's type. They don't, and they would tell my wife, like, he's got ammonia in his blood and his liver doesn't work and it's poison in his brain and he doesn't know what he's doing. And I believe that I left, according to my wife, because she would listen to me on the phone, I'd leave Dana choice messages.
Dana White?
Yeah. It's not funny, but it's funny if you realize how sick I was. I thought I was going to die. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, I was living the rock and roll lifestyle. I used to joke around. Rock and rollers couldn't even hang with me. Once I got into WCW, those guys live rock and roll lifestyle. It's like an athletic rock and roll lifestyle, and I, as you can imagine, pushed it to the floor and pedal to the metal. Man, I was getting down.
Was there ever a time where you were realizing that if I keep going,
Yes.
something's going to... When was that? When did it start feeling like that?
I use this, well, when I was wrestling, I mean, it was the rock and roll lifestyle. Like, you fly on a jet, boom, 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 go for an 8-day loop, fly home, do your laundry, do your thing. And that kept me from really taking off crazy. But once WCW got sold and my contract was still valid and I had money coming in and a whole bunch of time. So leaving Las Vegas with Nick Cage, when he's the agent and he gets fired from that show, or not show, but talent agency. And he's like, Ben Saunderson. And he's like, what am I going to do now? I think I'll go to Vegas. I was Ben Saunderson after WCW was done, and I wasn't leaving every week to go somewhere new. I was like, what am I going to do now? And I go, I guess I'll just drink myself to death. Not consciously, but
that's what you were doing.
I was getting down.
So
man.
that's when the liver started failing.
No.
No?
My liver started failing when I went back to the UFC. That's when I held on, man. I pulled it physical feat. But when Dana called me to come back for the to do my comeback thing, I'm like, sure. And I kind of got into shape. But he flew me out to Atlantic City, I believe, and he goes, okay, I need you to be down here tomorrow. We're going to do a shoot, this whole 9 yards. And I pride myself on being responsible and doing what I'm supposed to do and being there on time. I'm one of those kind of people. And so I go to wake up, and this is like I'm coming back kind of thing, and I was supposed to be at this shoot. I could not. I was like, could not get out of bed. I was that sick. And I almost missed the whole show. I just out of just crawling to get there. And I got there halfway through the show, and his agent or his person that worked for him came up to me and goes, oh, here you are. Where were you? And I'm going, oh, man, I just didn't feel very good. I was awful, like nauseous, sick all the time.
So I think that's when your liver was starting to fail.
Yeah, and there's stages.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of, it's called a compensated liver, decompensated liver. It was compensated liver, and it's like all the things where your liver stops working and you get sicker and sicker, and that's when you start turning yellow. They would pump my stomach or my cavity, pull out like a couple 2-liter things all the time. It was just poison just running through your body, and like encephalopathy going through your brain. I was a complete crazy, like, Ben Saunderson is the guy in Leaving Las Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
I make him look like a kindergartner. I was that out of control. I was insane. I can look back and just go,
Have you thought about writing a book?
I have written a book, and I'm glad you brought that up, man. Thank you.
Is it out?
Yes. It's a trilogy. I wrote a 900-page trilogy.
Really?
Yeah.
Did you bring it? Did you bring the book?
Yes, I did. It's in my bag over there. There's 3 of them. The first one's called Bar Brawler, and it's about when it's 300-plus pages long. It's about how the mid-'80s and early '90s, how people used to be, and how there's some really graphic fights in it, and who some people think it's an autobiography, but it's written as a novel.
Okay. That's a good way to do it.
Yes, and the main character is Walter Fox, and Walter Fox, it's how Walter Fox goes through his life beating people up at bars and all that, and ends up fighting in a show called NHB, and they call him Crazy Fox. And it's how Walter Fox, through all these trials and tribulations, ends up as Crazy Fox at the end of it. There's a trilogy, it's 900 pages long plus.
Did you write all this by yourself?
Yes, every single page. I didn't have a ghostwriter, I didn't have anything.
Just sit in front of a laptop? You write it up by hand?
I scribbled it out on a spiral notebook, bunch of them,
Yeah.
and I hunt and pecked the whole 900-plus pages.
Wow.
3 books.
Why didn't you just learn how to type?
Because I'm dumb. But,
Well, you know, Hunter S. Thompson never really learned how to type. Hunter S. Thompson was hunting and pecking when he was writing, like, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas.
You know, I'm telling you this, especially if you're a fight fan. It's called Before There Were Rules, and it's awesome. I'm pumping myself up. But if you want to know how a real fighter, in my eyes,
Before There Were Rules.
yes, that's the 3rd book. The 2nd book is Cage Fighter, and the 1st book is Bar Brawler. And it goes pretty much the whole, what we've been discussing, it goes through all of those things.
And where can people get these books?
They're on Amazon.
Okay.
And it's, some people think it's an autobiography. Like I said, it's
fiction.
Exactly
It's
right.
fiction, folks.
Was it plausible deniability?
Yeah, exactly. Fiction, folks.
And there's like there's a fighting promoter, matchmaker, and his name is Big Bart Shady. And of that show, the NHB show, the referee's name is Winchell Duncan. And he's a little guy with a big ego. And so you could draw parallels, but I don't tell you how to think. But it's actually how Walter Fox got all the way through the bar scenes and everything that I discussed. It's how Walter Fox ended up becoming Crazy Fox.
Have you done a audiobook for this?
Yes.
Did you read it?
I listened to it.
Oh, okay. Somebody else read it. Somebody else read it?
No, it's it's on AI.
Oh, AI did it.
Yeah, it's pretty good. I
Wow.
was worried about the inflection and everything.
Right.
It came out really good.
No, they're very sophisticated now. It's pretty
Yeah.
incredible what they can do now.
It's awesome.
David, thank you very much for being here, man. You're an American original. You
all
really
right,
are.
appreciate
And
it.
it's been cool to know you all these years and
Yes.
you made the UFC a very exciting thing in the early days. You were one of the big reasons for its early success.
Yes, I believe so.
I think so too. I think everybody thinks so. And
right on,
I
cool.
appreciate you, brother, and good health to you. And I hope you
Likewise.
feel better. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anybody, your website, anywhere else people can see your stuff?
Oh yeah, no, just Amazon. Before there are rules.
Do you have
And-
a website?
Yeah. Well, what's it called? Instagram.
Instagram? What's the
Yeah.
Instagram?
Tank.Abbott.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I think. Anyways, yeah, like I said, I've had 5 strokes, so it's amazing that I'm even talking. So, but what was I going to tell you? There's my stroke.
I don't know. We were
Place
talking about
evidence.
website, Instagram, buy the books on Amazon, your Instagram, Tank.Abbott.
Oh yeah, before there are rules. The first word, I wrote, like I said, I wrote every single page of this book. The first word is misspelled, so all you narcissists,
You just get preemptively blocking people getting mad at you for misspelling things.
no, I put it out there as bait for all those narcissists to tell me how dumb I am.
Well, you could have just corrected it. I
No,
misspell
no,
things all the
no,
time. No? You're just always playing games?
Yes,
All right. Well, thanks, brother. Thanks for being here, man. It's great to see you again.
it's a pleasure.
And
Thank
again,
you for having me
best of
on.
health to you. Thank you.
Likewise.
Bye, everybody.